Morning, everyone. 6 days until Global Compact on Migration is signed by Justin Trudeau. And here's the petition. A lot of people in my comments keep asking, why aren't you talking about the petition? Somebody said, is it the same reason Mr. Scheer doesn't talk about the Global Compact on Migration? And no, certainly not. A lot of the time I don't talk about the petition because I have a whole bunch of links loaded at the top, and I am talking about the Global Compact on Migration, but I've signed the petition and I don't often visit the site. So just for you guys, I've added it to my website. So sign the PPC supported petition, Maxime Bernier supported petition against the Global Compact. So there's a link in my form in my website, and there will be a link at the top of this video and all future videos, hopefully, until the Global Compact is signed on the 10th, or not signed, hopefully not signed. So yesterday I showed you guys a clip of Mr. Andrew Scheer unequivocally denouncing the Global Compact on Migration. He said a whole bunch in his presser, but the meat of it was essentially that he thought that this Global Compact would be removing Canada's sovereignty, and that his government would remove Canada from the compact if he forms the next government. And I said that was good for Canada. I'm going to explain that position even further. So just back to the petition really quickly. If you haven't signed, go sign, and make sure that you click the email confirmation. Otherwise your signature doesn't count. So they'll email you and then you have to click the signature, or you have to click the email to confirm the signature. So Maxime Bernier tweeted out after seeing Andrew Scheer take a position on the Global Compact, leadership. And I'm glad. Yes, perfect. And I thought Michelle Rempel's response was fantastic. Like for the snark, I didn't think it was good in any other sense. Just it was really snarky, and I like seeing people snark back and forth. That's okay. Like that's human, right? We're all human, and we need to. It's okay to do that kind of stuff. So I thought it was funny. It made me laugh. Good job, Michelle, and good job, Mr. Bernier, for recognizing that Andrew Scheer spoke up about this. We needed the leader of the opposition to speak up about this. Silence isn't an option at this point in time. It's very clear that Canada's sovereignty is at stake because this non-binding resolution, this non-binding agreement, this compact, this treaty would change our laws. It's agreeing that we are going to change our laws to align with that non-binding treaty. And somebody on, I can't remember, Twitter or maybe Reddit, was making the point that the Paris Agreement was non-binding. The only mechanism of checks and balances is reporting the CO2 emissions. And that's not even, there's no punishment if you don't do it. It's just, don't do it. So everybody is, quote, trying to do this. And nobody's going to reach the targets. But people are using that for backing legal decisions. And the Trudeau government is using it for partially reasons to shut down pipelines, in addition to poorly following their own rules. So, as I said, I think this is good overall for the leadership of Canada to have the leader of the opposition come out against the Global Compact on Migration. The Global Compact on Migration is not a good thing for Canada. However, and Maxime Bernier agreeing with that or saying leadership to this is one step. We can have two politicians in leadership who disagree and who want the best for Canada. The jury's still out, Mr. Scheer. It took you a very long time to come up with this. And here's Maxime Bernier talking about that as well. It took Mr. Scheer far too long to come out against the Global Compact, and Maxime calls him out on this. So Maxime Bernier says, quote, "Here are my tweets denouncing the Global Compact for migration from more than a month ago." And there's a whole tweet thread. And I'm not going to go through the tweet thread because I did a video on it a month ago, and Maxime Bernier was unequivocally against the Compact for Migration. And imagine the protests, imagine the groundswell of support that whichever politician took a stance on this would have gotten for the last month. And maybe people putting on some yellow jackets, hey, right? To support the politician who's willing to stand up for Canada. That's the guy who was supporting or not supporting the Global Compact for more than a month. And Maxime points that out. Another tweet by Mr. Bernier last night says, quote, "Piper, I proposed to reduce the immigration levels 2 years ago. You can read it here." And there's a MaximeBernier.com link about immigration. "The CPC won't say if they want more or less immigration. As for the compact, Rempel changed her tune and opposed it only a week ago, a month after I raised the issue." And that's true. I was doing a video last week, and I've done a couple of videos on Miss Rempel, and not flip-flopping, but basically she said, yeah, it's not binding, don't worry about it. To her credit, she went back and looked at this. She did study it, and the study came back, and now the CPC is unequivocally against it. But I mean, it's a good thing that people on Twitter and Mr. Bernier were holding these people to account. Otherwise, we may have sleepwalked I don't know if that's the correct term, right into this terrible agreement. And instead, we're walking into it eyes wide open. And we'll get to why I think two parties who are for Canada, if the CPC is for Canada, if the leader of the CPC is for Canada, and I hope that he is, I want that. That helps our country, right? And two leaders who are for Canada can exchange ideas on how best to support Canada. But if we've got two leaders who are willing to sell Canada to the UN, well, that doesn't help us very much. And that's what that's the position France is in. So make no mistake, the CPC was pushed into this by people who were loud, like Maxime Bernier and like all of us on Twitter. We wouldn't let it drop. And I'm glad, because this is a big issue. I keep saying it. There's 6 days left. We're signing in less than a week. Mr. Trudeau is in the House of Commons calling people rebel media conspiracy theorists if they bring up any questions about this compact. We should be flooding the Prime Minister's office with phone calls too. Sign the petition. The petition is in the description along with all the links here. Maxime Bernier is again commenting on how long it's taken the CPC to come out against this compact. Quote, astounding hypocrisy from Rempel. She says in a video today that Global Compact on Migration is being non-binding is, quote, a talking point that Trudeau has been using. But just a month ago, she was using the exact same talking point to minimize the GCM, the Global Compact on Migration threat. Check this thread. And here's a thread with Michelle saying, no, it's fine, nothing to see here. And again, like I said, to her credit, she went and researched that. But that is to our credit. We pushed the CPC to do this. We pushed them to take the position without noise, without people standing up and saying, hey, this is something that there are at least 10 countries pulling out more. Why are we blazing the trail? It's awful. It's awful. It's legally ambiguous. The language is easily manipulated. And there are countries who are concerned for their sovereignty and so are not following through with this. There are consequences for that in the UN. And I think there are going to be consequences for the UN, and I hope soon, but who knows? Finally, what I was getting at is Justin Trudeau's foreign spending is out of control. And I did a video earlier this year talking about how it's never enough. And there was a whole blitz in 2017 and the beginning of 2018 talking about how Canada's, and this is budget time, right? So this is to soften the blow of increasing foreign aid and foreign spending in the 2018 budget, despite the fact that Alberta's on fire, despite the fact that there's job losses, 200,000 job losses across Alberta, and the manufacturing heart of Ontario, we didn't know it then, but was about to be ripped out of its chest, right? And realistically, they knew in February that Donald Trump was president, and they knew he wanted to renegotiate NAFTA. So, I don't know. Is that the right time to increase foreign spending? And the foreign spending, Finance Minister Bill Morneau's budget pledged $2 billion over 5 years to increase international aid through new international assistance innovation program designed to come up with flexible new financing arrangements and the sovereign loans program. So these are flexible financing arrangements, to build roads and things in other countries, and we take the risk and we give them the money, and our tax dollars are out of the country. So I was looking for a long list of spending by Trudeau, and apparently this one lists over $10 billion in foreign aid. And then, our modern day internet, when I try and go to the link, it doesn't work. It's gone. So I hope Mr. Fernando backed this up. I couldn't find it. But my point is, if you've got one prime minister who's trying to spend all of the money outside of Canada, and that's Justin Trudeau. He is a UN prime minister. He is an anti-Canadian prime minister. He's not for Canada. He wants a UN seat. So I think if the Conservatives wanted to have some branding, and I am the last person to talk about branding, sorry, but if I were to be running the Conservative and People's Party, I would say this election is not about Justin Trudeau. We know that he has to go. Everybody knows that he is not a prime minister for Canada. We all know that. And now we need to figure out the best path forward and have the conversation. And there's going to be some people who fall in Max's camp, and there's going to be people who fall in Scheer's camp. And that's okay. But I think just like in Ontario, there are so many who see what Trudeau is doing that he's laid bare. The emperor is naked, right? This whole idea that the budget will balance itself, and letting unchecked people into Canada, opening the borders and spending our money in foreign countries is just not the way to run Canada, right? And the people who believe in that are shrinking by the day, right? And the people who are looking for an alternative that makes sense is increasing. And there's that big mushy center that Scheer is really trying desperately to take, but he's waiting too long to take positions. He's waiting for his focus groups and his all of the surveys and stuff to come back. Whereas Max is taking a position a month ago and saying, this is terrible. Like, look at this. This is terrible. He's not waiting for somebody else to tell him what position to take. He's saying, hold on a second. He's using his skills to read. I mean, he was a lawyer and all sorts of other, he's got quite the resume as far as I've read. But he looks at that, looks at the Global Compact on migration and makes a decision. So if you're me, I mean, I am me, so I choose Max. But I think there's a conversation to be had, and I think the conversation will make Canada better. And I think the conversation includes, do we want to spend money in foreign countries, or do we want to fix Alberta? Do we want to fix Ontario? And I have a plan. And the person with the plan is Maxime Bernier, as far as I can tell. Because Mr. Scheer has been chasing Mr. Bernier for the last month. And he's just been a step behind. And now he's catching up, and he's got the bigger party, right? He's got all of his EDAs set up. He's got all sorts of infrastructure. He's leader of a big party. He's official opposition. That's a huge, huge advantage. I recognize that totally. But I think that the fact that we have a system like we've got today, where people like me can tell people like you what I think and lay things out. We have a communication system that allows the EDAs to be built. We have a communication system that allows people to collect around ideas and other people that they think are worthwhile. So I think this is going to be different. I hope it's going to be different than it was in the 90s. And we'll see. We'll see. There are so many political things happening, including what's happening in France and Belgium, and in Vancouver with the money laundering through casinos, and the money laundering tied to the Liberal caucus with the sitting cabinet minister implicated. Like, this is big stuff, bad things happening in an election year for the Liberals, and a lot of momentum shifting to CPC and PPC. PPC has momentum in their own right, and the CPC doesn't look like they're losing a whole lot. They're a solid 33 every time I see them with the polls, or higher, 33. I've seen 36 as well. So what I think has happened is the Liberal Party, when the whole dust settles, I think the Liberal Party will be seen as an anti-Canadian or like a globalist party by the time the election hits. And I think that the battle will be between Mr. Bernier and Mr. Scheer. And I think that those guys can work together, whether it's a minority government between the two of them, or an agreed coalition or something to that effect. I think there's room, and I think everyone understands the stakes. And by everyone, I'm not talking. I think the electorate does. I think people who are paying attention to this know the stakes. But I think Mr. Scheer knows the stakes. I think Mr. Bernier knows the stakes, and I think there's a year to go before the election, and there's so much that can happen, right? And I don't think that we're looking at re-amalgamating the parties. I think that that's fractured, and I don't think that that's even necessary, because, well, I think I've explained it. The Liberals are just fallen off a left-handed cliff, and Scheer's inhabited the center. And yeah, I think that's the path. And I think Max probably becomes prime minister, if he does become prime minister in 2023. But who knows? Who knows? I'm just speculating here. And like I said, there's a year out. So, man, there's so much that can happen. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. And have an excellent day. And check out the People's Party and sign the petition against the Global Compact that is signed in 6 days. Thanks for watching, everybody.